What's good, y'all? Happy Wednesday. It is December the 7th, 2021. December 8th, 2021. My bad. And I wanted to go live right now because I've been doing some reading, some studying, and I came across some really interesting things. This video is called The Reverse Racism Effect. So what am I talking about with reverse racism? Let's get to it quickly. Well, let's show a video real quick. Let me see if I can share my screen. I'll show you a video just to give you an example of what the reverse racism effect is. What's up, Brooklyn Outlaw? It's good, bro. I'm going to share this one video just to give you one example. There are many examples, but this is a really good example of what is the reverse racism effect and why does this matter right now, especially in this time where everybody's talking about racial injustices and racial disparities. You know, this is the most interesting topic to me right now. So I've been covering this a lot. I've been studying this a lot, and you know, I want to share this with y'all. Just a little background here. This is in Chicago, and this suspect right here is on PCP, and the officers are trying to detain him. He's acting crazy up in the streets, and you're gonna see these officers having a real hard time detaining him, and they eventually do, and have to beat this dude up like a lot. They could have killed him. They could have shot him. They actually had the right to shoot him, but they didn't.
As the officers struggled to get Huff cuffed, he got a hold of Murillo's hair. She cried.
Yeah, this guy's name is Parda Huff, if you want to look him up. Parda Huff.
Smashing her head into the pavement. Moments later, a tactical officer responded to Murillo's hair. She cries out in pain, and then Huff falls backwards and pulls Murillo down with him, smashing her head into the pavement. Moments later.
So here this guy, Huff, Parda Huff, is smashing the woman, the female officer's head into the pavement. Now, this is the right. Now she has the right to apply lethal force, and so do the other officers.
The tactical officer responding to the radio call for help rushes up and grabs Huff's leg and tries to pull him off, but Huff refuses to let go of Murillo. Officers deploy tasers multiple times, but Huff is unfazed and keeps his vice grip on Murillo's hair.
Yo, there's sometimes when you use tasers on these people, especially when they're on PCP and different drugs, it gives them like a superpower. It's like they power up. Like it does nothing. Yeah, he's literally ripping her hair off of her skull. That's how hard he's fucking pulling her hair.
He's got Murillo's head. He's not letting go. Retainer. It's not working. A day after the incident, the superintendent said Murillo would have been justified in shooting Huff in this situation.
So they said that they would have actually been justified in shooting this guy during the situation, but they didn't.
But she told him she did not use her gun because she did not want the scrutiny of a Laquan McDonald situation.
Because she didn't want the scrutiny of a Laquan McDonald situation. For those who don't know who Laquan McDonald is, he was a guy who was shot and killed by police, I believe, earlier that year. And it was unjustified. The police officer actually got like 7 years or something like that, because Laquan McDonald did have a knife, but he wasn't charging the officers, and it was determined that the officer that shot him, which he shot him a bunch of times too, did that unjustifiably, even though the guy did have a knife and refused, to comply with the orders to drop the knife. He still wasn't charging anybody at the time, and the officers were charged, or one officer that shot was charged, and he was convicted of 6 to, I believe it was 6 or 7 years. You know, for people that like to say, oh, they never charge off, you know, the officers that shoot black people. You know, like there's one example. But because of that situation, now what is happening is the reverse effect is happening, where officers are now looking at black suspects and saying and having a reverse racism effect, where instead of a racist, what people always imply that they look at black suspects and they look at them like criminals and they want to just shoot them and kill them because they're scared of them or whatever. It's actually the opposite is what's happening. You can see it happening nationwide, where officers actually are more hesitant to pull the trigger because of the scrutiny that's going to come on them from the public. And of course, you're going to be judged by the courts. So in this case, even though this guy was unarmed, right, he didn't have a knife or a gun, this is still a situation where you can kill an unarmed suspect. Because people think, oh, another unarmed suspect was killed. That's unjustified simply because of the fact that he's unarmed. That does not matter. Just because you're unarmed doesn't mean you're not, violent, you're not deadly, and you're not potentially a risk. So let's keep watching this.
Situation after Huff was. She did not use her gun because she did not want the scrutiny of a Laquan McDonald situation. After Huff was finally subdued, the tactical officer's body camera caught this telling exchange with firefighters that shows how attitudes about deadly force have been impacted by cameras.
I got tased watching. I was the first one here, Russell. He got me and him.
A couple months ago, you could have shot him.
You heard that? The cop said a couple months ago you could have shot him. So this is what I'm talking about with the reverse racism effect. Cops in a lot of these situations now are starting to realize that it's not even worth it to shoot and kill these suspects. They're trying to subdue these suspects now using other methods, other forms. There's other situations where cops could have used deadly force. I just wanted to show that video because at the end right there, it's very telling what the cop says, where he says, a couple months ago, you could have shot him, which is true. But so because of these social justice groups, BLM and everything, they focus so much on people of color that get shot, but they don't focus on people like this. I want to show this real quick. Hopefully they don't block my my video for this, but yeah, let's show this here. It's a guy on a wheelchair, a white guy on a wheelchair that was killed.
We begin with the latest on a shocking shooting involving a Tucson police officer. Thank you for joining us.
Let me see. My bad. I gotta share my screen. Share my screen. Yeah, so this is pretty much an officer shooting of a man on a wheelchair in Walmart that was called for stealing a toolbox from Walmart. And he tried to make his way back into the Walmart holding a knife. But keep in mind, he's in a wheelchair. It's very difficult to stab somebody when you're in a wheelchair. It's very easy for you to get away from somebody that's in a wheelchair. So this shooting was definitely unjustified. The cop was already fired. And I just want to show this.
I'm Amanda Gomez. Sean is off tonight. A news conference was held today by Officer Ryan Remington's lawyer and the Tucson Police Officers Association, who say there has been a rush to judgment. The shooting happened Monday night outside of the Lowe's on Valencia Road, but it all started at the Walmart across the street after police say Richard Lee Richards was caught stealing a toolbox. Tucson police say an employee tried to stop him, but he pulled out a knife. Officers followed him to the nearby Lowe's. They say he ignored demands to stop. That's when Officer Remington shot him 9 times in the back and side. Police Chief Chris Magnus has condemned Officer Remington's actions and has moved to fire him. News 4 Tucson, Shelley Jackson joins us live tonight downtown with more on what Remington's lawyer had to say earlier today. Shelley.
Tucson Attorney Mike Story represents the Tucson Police Officers Association. He says video released at yesterday's press conference does not paint the full picture of what happened at Monday's incident. Story says the entire thing lasted just minutes, but the entire time Officer Remington was constantly trying to de-escalate that situation, trying to get Richard Lee Richards to drop the knife. Story says Richards made comments to Remington that he would have to shoot him to get him to drop that knife.
So just so far, you know, because I posted this video on my Instagram. I don't want to show it because it's you know, it's a little too much and YouTube might block it. But you know, the video that I posted, I probably should have posted the entire, you know, encounter, which shows that, you know, they were trying to talk to this guy. They were in the parking lot. They were walking, you know, walking behind him, trying to chase him down, trying to stop him. And he refused to do all of this, you know, to listen to cops. And he even said, as some of the officers are saying, he was even saying, you know, you're going to have to shoot me. Now, this doesn't give you a reason to shoot somebody, especially somebody in a wheelchair. Even though they're holding a knife, I know that's you know, usually a reason to shoot somebody. But in the case of Laquan McDonald, he was also holding a knife, but he wasn't charging anybody. In this case, he was holding a knife and making his way to a public place like Walmart, which is maybe where the cop can get some leeway there. And you can see the Walmart greeter right there at the front where the guy was pulling up in the you know, in the Walmart, pretty much the Walmart entrance. So he was coming close to her. But you know, I don't know. This case is very iffy here. Let's just keep playing this.
Story, or Richards rather, has a history of aggression towards police. And Story says the incident has the earmarks of suicide by cop. Story also started the press conference today by speaking out against Tucson Mayor Regina Romero. Can you tell me?
What we're deeply troubled about is we are currently living in a climate where we have a very irresponsible mayor who comes out less than 24 hours after the incident and makes statements that are inflammatory and bastardize the process when she claims that this officer's actions are indefensible.
And Tucson Mayor Regina Romero releasing a statement this afternoon. The police union is not the most objective arbiter in this matter. The video speaks for itself. As I mentioned yesterday, I ask our community to remain calm and be patient as investigations ensue. Now, the Pima County Attorney's Office will investigate the matter and determine if any criminal charges will be filed. From downtown, Shelley Jackson, News 4 Tucson.
Thank you so much, Shelley. And we are learning more about the man shot by Officer Remington. News 4 Tucson's Lupita Murillo joins us live from downtown, where she spoke to Richard Lee Richards' former attorney. Lupita.
Richard Lee Richard was in and out of these law offices. And the last time he was here was earlier this year after he was released from federal prison. The court-appointed attorney tells News 4 Tucson that his former client had problems with authority.
Stewart says the 61-year-old convicted felon has been in and out of prison since he was 19 years old. He was released from federal prison earlier this year. Richards was charged with smuggling illegal aliens into the United States. Stewart says he got him released to pretrial services, but within a week, he was picked up again for violating his conditions of release. Stewart says he was doing drugs.
And the marshals arrested him in the pretrial office in the federal court building, and they had an incident with him. He was apparently physically abusive, and he swung something at the marshals. It was whether it was a knife or a baton or something. In any event, he was definitely very hostile to the idea of going back into custody.
So that's pretty much it. You know, this guy was hostile. The question remains, was it justified? You know, we'll leave that up to the courts. You know, let's give these courts due process. Let's give these officers due process. So many people want to rush to judgment all the time, and there's like this mob mentality that wants to bring forth this mob justice. It reminds me of the damn Salem witch trials and shit. You know, but I mean, from what I can see, just to give you my opinion, I don't think it was justified when you have somebody in a wheelchair that, you know, can't really do much harm to anybody else. You know, I mean, I guess that's debatable. But the reason why I showed that was just to show you that I don't think I've ever heard of a story where a black man in a wheelchair was shot by cops. You know, I might be wrong. I think I remember one where a black man was tased and they went crazy over that. But if I believe that if this guy Richard Lee Richards was a black man in a wheelchair shot by cops, this story would have went way more viral. You would have had the social justice warriors posted on their Instagram and Twitter pages and their social media pages, and that would have spiraled out of control. That's where it starts. It usually takes, you know, one of these famous, you know, Hollywood people to come out and you know, post one of these things, to share one of these stories, for it to become, you know, what these other stories pretty much become. So I wanted to read this study real quick on the reverse racism effect, pretty much. Where's it at? Yeah, because they've done a lot of research on these different cases or different racial biases that are in the justice system. And there's many cases that they were unable to find a racial bias in police shootings, a racial bias in sentencing of inmates, especially when it comes to life sentencing. There, you know, you can't find any racial bias. You actually find the opposite, where white people are sentenced more, are given life sentences more often than black people. So here's what the reverse racism effect is, according to Lois James. This is an assistant professor at Washington State University College of Nursing. And the key findings in this study was that police officers were slower to shoot armed black suspects than armed white suspects. Police officers were less likely to shoot unarmed black suspects than unarmed white suspects. So in either situation, armed or unarmed, they were less likely, according to this study, they were less likely to shoot black people. So let's get a description here. Race-related debates often assume that implicit racial bias will result in racially biased decisions to shoot. Previous research has examined racial bias in police decisions by pressing shoot or don't shoot buttons in response to pictures of armed and unarmed suspects. So what this is talking about, which they've done a lot of studies on this, where they'll have some type of examination technique, a drill, a video where it's like a simulation where people or police officers will press a button to shoot or not press a button at all, which implicates that you're not going to shoot. And they'll show you photos of armed or unarmed suspect with different races. And there's been many studies done on this where you actually have situations where black suspects are not being shot, where the studies show that people are less inclined to shoot black people, where police officers are actually less inclined. So as a result of its lack of external validity, however, this methodology provides limited insight into officer behavior in the field. In response, we conducted the first series of experimental research studies that tested police officers and civilians in strikingly realistic deadly simulators. So every time a new study comes out, they try to pretty much factor in other things that the previous studies didn't factor, so they can pretty much get a better study than the previous ones, because these things have been done before since like 1974. And in 1974, we lived in a different time than we live in now. where we have different racial tensions. I think it's calmed down a lot, but it's being hyped up by these social justice groups. The media is playing a big part. Social media is playing a big part in people's perception of what's actually going on. But these studies show a different story. So the policy implication says, this article reports that the results of our most recent experiment, which tested 80 police patrol officers by applying this leading edge method, we found that despite clear evidence of implicit bias against Black suspects, so there's no evidence about that, officers were slower to shoot armed Black suspects than armed white suspects. And they were less likely to shoot unarmed Black suspects than unarmed white suspects. These findings challenge the assumption that implicit racial bias affects police behavior in deadly encounter with Black suspects. So people talk a lot about these implicit racial biases. You hear that a lot nowadays. I hear that a lot. And this is supposed to be an uncontrolled bias that you don't even know that you're having these thoughts. Implicit bias or unconscious bias, it's the same thing. You hear both, you hear those two different terms. So these are thoughts that you don't even know yet that you're having. And they're something that it's like learned behavior, that it's probably true. Like, how some stereotypes have truths to it. So you learn this and you learn to operate naturally based off of past experiences and learned behavior. So you don't even know that you're having these thoughts. So you might imply, but what people usually say is that when you see a Black person, that cops usually imply that, oh, this Black person is probably a thug, or this Black person is probably this and probably that, not realizing that there's a culture, there's a way that certain Black people like to dress that implies that they are involved with a certain culture. And that culture is what's probably the negative culture, not so much the skin color of the person, but the way that the person is dressed. This is what a lot of the studies of implicit and unconscious bias doesn't test for. There's a lot of variables that are untested and not factored in to a lot of these studies. So I like to look at more recent studies. Here's another study that I was looking at that I found really interesting, that this was actually done in the university in Maryland, I believe. And this is dealing with sentencing Black and white inmates, and dealing with inmates that are eligible for life sentences. You're going to find something really interesting here. This is the University of Maryland, UMD. Man, so this is an official, detailed study from the Department of Criminal Justice, where they studied over 4,000, I think 5,000 cases, and they factored in race and all of that. UMD study finds Black offenders more likely than white offenders to be eligible for life sentences. So eligibility doesn't mean that you're going to be convicted or sentenced for a life sentence. That just means that Black offenders are more eligible. That means that they're committing worse crimes, is what this is showing. Now, let's see if they're actually convicting them of life sentences. I mean, just to give you a quick recap of what they found. A recent study published in Criminology by researchers at the University of Maryland and at Arizona State University finds that Black and Hispanic offenders were more likely to be eligible for life sentences under federal sentencing guidelines, but not more likely to receive life sentences. You can read this on your own. This is a very long article. Actually, we can read it, man. Let's just read it. So this was really interesting, man. I mean, I had to go live and just do a video on this. I was gonna actually edit a video, but I kind of felt like going live just to interact with y'all. Maybe if y'all want to ask questions and all of that. I'll also put the link if y'all want to join. Hold on 1 second here. Yeah, just if y'all want to join this, you can join me or whatever. We can talk. Let's go back to the study. So The study analyzed 7 years of federal sentencing data to investigate the associations between life sentences in federal courts and race or ethnicity. 2 out of 3 people serving life terms are defendants of color. And our study raises additional concerns about the extent to which life sentences are impacted by racial bias, said Professor Brian D. Johnson of the Department of Criminology and Criminal Justice, the lead author. So this is a fact. 2 out of 3 people serving life sentences are people of color, pretty much. So this is including Black, Hispanic, or any other race. I believe Asians are thrown in there also, because Asians fall in a weird category that disprove this entire racism of America, because Asians are actually doing great in America. Their home ownership has like quintupled or quadrupled since like the 1930s in America, which they've beat all other races in, at least in percentage wise, because they were like 10% of Asian Americans owned a home in the 1930s. And that has now turned to 58% of Asian Americans that own a home in I believe 2015 or 2010 was the last time they factored that in, maybe even more recently. That number is amazing compared to from 10% to 58%. There's no other race that's jumped up so much. African Americans went up from 20% home ownership to about 45% home ownership, I believe, or 40-something% home ownership. Hispanics are right around the same, 22 to 25% home ownership in the 30s, all the way up to about 50 or something like that. So everybody has grown at the same rate. White people were like 40% or 35% homeowners in the 30s, and they went up to like 60 or 70% homeowners now. So, they pretty much doubled. Hispanics doubled. Black people doubled. It's pretty much all the same, but Asians have quadrupled their percentage-wise, if you understand the numbers. I've always been really good with math. That's why I love doing these studies and figuring out these numbers out. I used to take accounting classes in high school, college course accounting classes in high school. So percentage-wise and doing all this, per capita and ratios and all of that, I've always been really good with that. So I can factor out and do that really quick. My next video is actually going to be on black crime. I'm actually working on editing that because there's a lot of information on that. And you have to take into account per capita. You have to take into account the rate at which crime is committed. All of that is really important. And black on black crime, that term is always demonized as if it's a negative term. But the reason why that term, and I'll show you in the video once I posted it, why that term is spoken about so much, and you hear about it more than white on white crime or anything else. So yeah, let's go back to that. So Johnson and his colleagues analyzed data on more than 366,000 non-immigrant offenders. Wow, it was more than that. That's a whole bunch. So this is a very intricate study. This study, to deal with that many offenders, Jesus Christ, and offenders convicted and sentenced in 90 federal district courts from 2010 to 2017. So this is a pretty recent analyzation of data. The data is pretty recent, because if you go back to like the 60s or the 50s or the 70s and do a study, there's probably going to be more racial disparities and racial biases against Black people, of course. But things have dramatically changed in this country. And you have professors like this. You have very liberal people out here that are willing to, help out and really understand what's going on in the Black and Hispanic community, because there is a lot of issues. But I think that one of the main problems is that we're often victimized, and the issues are pointed elsewhere instead of within. We're always told that it's other people that are treating us, unfairly, and that's why we are disproportionately in the prison system. And it's like, no, these people are committing crimes. That's why you find them in the prison systems. It's not like they're not doing anything. And the rate of offenders that are charged unfairly, or what's the word, that are pretty much that are not the offenders, which they got the wrong offender pretty much. They got the wrong suspect and they're jailed for doing a crime that they didn't commit. That rate is very low when compared to the people that are in prison. So people do get arrested for things that they didn't do. I'm not gonna front like that doesn't happen, but it's not a major issue like people like to make it seem. Like this is why there's so many black people. It's because the majority of black people didn't do anything. That's not true. The percent of, they did a study on this from the 1980s all the way to 2016 of the people that were unjustly convicted, and it was like 900 black people and like 500 or 600 white people and like 200 or 300 Hispanics, something like that. I forgot the numbers exactly, but it was like 900 African Americans in 36 years. That's a little dent in the numbers of African Americans that are in the prison system right now. Even though, okay, that's unjust and that doesn't make it right, but still that's a minor compared to the people that are in prison, you know. So for people to say that these people are innocent, there's no evidence of that. The majority of these people are actually guilty. The vast majority of these people are actually guilty. 900 is a drop in the bucket compared to the people that are in jail. So let me see this here. Yeah, black people just say, KOA says in the comment section says, yeah, black people just say that because white people have never kept Asians down. Yeah, that whole Asian thing, man. That whole Asian thing disproves this America is racist against people of color, man. Asians have a strong cultural work ethic. Like that shit is unraveled in their culture. You know, you always see them. They're business entrepreneurs. They always open up, shops. They own everything when it comes to retail or, different stores in the hood, especially in Los Angeles. They be like one of the main business owners in Los Angeles. They're like 11% of the population in Los Angeles. But like compared to black business owners, Asians are like way up there. Check out the big brain on Miguel. My bad. I didn't mean to boast about the math, but that's my specialty, man. I gotta boast, man. I gotta speak on good things about myself, man. And that's one of the things, man, because a lot of people out here ain't gonna give you your flowers and shit. So I'm giving myself my flowers and shit. But yeah, man, that's my specialty is numbers, math. You always hear me talk about this, or at least recently you hear me talk about this shit. Is because, I do a lot of reading on this stuff and I really like to understand what methodology they use to get these numbers, because a lot of times you read some of these studies and you'll get different results from other studies and you're like, how did this happen? Where one university that did this study got this result. And a lot of times you'll realize that the results come down to some of the methodologies that they use in the studies, the factors and all of that, but not to get too complex, man. The man's keeping me down, right? Yeah, man, that's a common excuse, man. People never look at what they do and shit. But yeah, they say immigrants were helped by white people. Immigrants have been helped, man, through these last years, man, especially since the 70s. They get a lot of help. Even the Biden administration, man. The Biden administration is giving out millions of dollars, not to just one family, but like to a bunch of different immigrants. They have like millions of dollars of budgets that they're gonna disperse to some immigrants that were held unjustly, I guess, during the time of Trump's presidency or something like that. Because they were going into the border like crazy during the time of Trump's presidency. They kept talking about the border, the Mexicans. And now all of a sudden it's all disappeared. Nobody wants to talk about the Haitians and all of that and the Mexicans. Well, actually, they were trying to make a big deal out of that with the guys that were on the horse. They were trying to say that the guys were whipping the Haitians. Like, what the hell? Like, nobody got whipped at the border. Like, whoever was pushing that, I saw Talib Kweli pushing that, the rapper Talib Kweli, and then a few like rap magazines. And I forgot what politicians. I think Maxine Waters, man. Maxine Waters, I don't know how she's a politician. Her IQ level must be like 60. Like, she's very dumb. I've heard her say some of the stupidest shit. And she was one of the ones that I think was talking about that they're whipping black people in the on the at the border, and this is reminiscent of slavery. Like there was nobody that got whipped. What are you talking about? It's so crazy how people's minds just, you know, and it's like a traumatic experience. Like nothing happened. Relax. But yeah, man, let's go back to this study here. They considered the demographic and legal factors associated with eligibility for life sentencing. Can y'all see this? I don't know if this is too small. Let me zoom in here. Yeah, there you go. They considered the demographic and legal factors associated with eligibility for life sentences. So, you know, they took all of that into account in their methodology, as well as the factors that shape judicial decisions to impose such sentences. The researchers also examined intermediate punishment processes that may indirectly contribute to racial disparity. So they try to cover all these things, man. This was a very detailed study. The study separated eligibility for a life sentence from its imposition. This is an important distinction because many federal offenders are not eligible for a life sentence, and most fall outside the guidelines that recommended, Johnson said. Including all offenders in an analysis of life, imprisonment can provide valuable information on its overall prevalence, but it conflates the legal and procedural mechanisms that shape eligibility for life with judicial decisions to impose it, the researchers said. Of the total number of offenders studied, more than 4,800 were eligible for life imprisonment, and 1,200 received life sentences, the study found. So they're not giving out life sentences to the majority of people eligible. You can see that's exactly 1/4 of the 4,800. 1,200 is exactly 1/4 or 1/4, 25% of the people that are eligible for life sentences get life sentences. So that's a good thing in itself right there, you know, because they love to say how the prison system in this country is so unjust, you know, and this right here shows you that they don't always do what they could do, which, you know, if you're eligible for life, you know, you would think, oh, they want to get you in there so they could turn you into a life slave. You know, the way that these people are, that some of these social, you know, justice warriors are talking out here nowadays. But 25% of the people are eligible for life are getting life sentences. So that's amazing right there on its own. Now, out of those, you're going to see they break that down by race. Offenders who were eligible for life imprisonment differed from other federal defendants in several ways. Black offenders accounted for fewer than 1/3 of all cases, but constituted nearly half of those eligible for life sentence. So even though African Americans or Black people are eligible for half of those life sentences, that's 24,000 of those. Wow. They were eligible for nearly half, about 24,000. But fewer than 1/3 of them was the ones that got actually life sentences. So you see, African Americans make up half of those that were eligible for life sentences, but fewer than 1/3 of them have received life sentences. By comparison, white offenders accounted for more than 1/3 of all cases, but constituted less than 1/4 of those eligible for life sentences. So if they're constituting for more than 1/3 of the life sentences, and it's saying that out of all the cases, that less than 1/4 of those were eligible for life sentences, that means that they're actually being sentenced more than African Americans. When you do the math there, you have to break it down by, you know, how they broke that down is like, you know, just comparing it, the ones that are eligible to the ones that are getting it. And you can see that white people are getting life sentences compared to the number that are eligible more than African Americans, because there's half of these cases that are eligible. African Americans are half of the cases that are eligible, and they're not even 1/3 of them are being sentenced. Compared to white people, it's way more. So as a whole, Black offenders were more likely to be sentenced to life but mostly because they were negatively impacted by intermediate procedural mechanism. So because there's more Black people in the system, that's the reason why you have more people that are sentenced to life that are Black. But when you compare it to the numbers that are eligible, that's what you have to compare it to. The number of the ones that are eligible, they're not getting sentenced at a high ass rate when you compare it to the other races. So that's what this found. That's what this study actually found. So it's trying to describe it here. It is showing you that as a whole, Black offenders were more likely to be sentenced to life. Why is that? Because they have more cases to where they're eligible to get life, because they commit more crime. They commit more violent crimes, more crimes that are eligible for you to get sentenced higher. So that's where the disparity comes in. The disparity comes in who's committing most of these crimes. They never like to talk about that. They always talk about, well, Black people make up the majority of the prison system and Black people make up the majority of arrests. Yeah, but who makes up the majority of the crimes committed? They never talk about that. So I love this study right here. I'm glad they did this. This is a very detailed study. Let's keep reading. Yeah, but mostly because they were negatively impacted by intermediate procedural mechanisms such as mandatory minimums, trial conviction, and guideline procedures. A lot of them also, African Americans, man, they have less trust in the system. They have less trust in lawyers. They have less trust in all of that than any other race. So that also impacts the sentencing. That also impacts their case and the outcome of that, and that also impacts how why they get arrested in the streets. They have less trust in the government, in everything, in life, period. So they already assume that they're going to get mistreated and discriminated on, because this is what you constantly hear in Hollywood, in the media, social media. They make it seem like there's like an epidemic of racism happening right now in 2021. It's ridiculous what they do. Every outcome they think is racial, just because it's a racial disparity. They think that racism is the main factor because of that outcome, when they don't realize that there's many factors to give you an outcome, and that's why you have some racial disparities. So just to mention a few things there that are harming, the Black community. Now it says, once these process related variables were factored in, the racial disparity disappeared and the ethnic disparity favoring Hispanics emerged. So Hispanics are even more favored than African Americans, but African Americans and Hispanics are favored above whites when it comes to the sentencing. The percentage rate is higher among white people that are getting convicted for life sentences when you compare to the ones that are eligible and the other races. Same thing. You have more people that are eligible for life sentencing that are people of color, but lesser of them are getting life sentences, is what this study found. Our findings suggest that racial inequality in the justice system can be understood as the combined output of the sum of individual decisions by court actors and the set of broader institutionalized biases embedded in formal policies, procedures, and practices of the court, the authors concluded. Among the study's limitations, the authors note their focus on the federal system, which is unique in its caseload composition, guidelines, and punishment procedures, and thus not generalizable to state systems. In addition, the study was limited to convicted offenders and lacked information on initial charging or plea bargaining decisions. So that's what they didn't account for, prior people that pled out and all of that stuff. They just dealt with convicted offenders. Although life without parole sentences are one of the most unique and controversial punishments in America, they're actually one of the least studied aspects of the criminal justice system in the United States, Johnson said. If there are racial disparities in this type of sentencing, as the study suggests, we must investigate the mechanisms that contribute to them. So this is a very good study right up in Maryland, man, and University of Arizona, or Arizona State University. I wanted to read that. I thought it was really interesting. Let's see here. They look like they was rounding them up like cattle. What else were they to do? So just reading some of your comments. These social justice warriors are like most of these guys in hip hop. He's a real dude because he sold drugs or he busts his gun. They make these cats that be wild in the police like they're saints. Yeah, that's one of the things that I see, like one of the problems with hip hop. Like these are the cool people. These are the people that a lot of the kids are looking up to because everybody's looking up to them. Everybody sees like, yo, they're making money. They're getting all the girls. And one of the things that people don't talk about, like that I've been realizing with psychology and sociology, is that the majority of reasons why men do things is for girls. That's very interesting. What I've been reading lately is that a lot of these things happen over girls. A lot of these crimes, these fights, social media beefs. The reason why people try to get money, the reason why men try to get money and excel, it's all for girls. I didn't even realize you was on, brother. Let me see. You on?
Yeah.
What's good, bro? How you doing?
I'm chilling, bro. What you was just saying about girls. Look at kingdoms before. Many kingdoms fell because of women. You know what I'm saying? It ain't nothing new.
Yeah,
There's
bro.
nothing new.
For sure.
But I was saying what I was trying to say in that message you just read is that in hip hop, the person that's like doing the most harm is protected. Like, oh, don't snitch, don't tell on them. But as soon as let's say, not in every case, but a police officer does something, they tell on everything, but they don't say nothing about, oh, don't snitch. They keep it quiet in their hood. But when it's the police, tell. And then it's not that they telling. In some cases, they're lying, bro.
It's straight lie. Yeah, I do that in some cases, man. Yeah, I mean, and there's some cases where police officers just want to close the case, and they'll take any information. That definitely happens. But when you look at the actual cases that, like in the Black community, the ones that are being solved, there's way less cases being solved in the Black community, bro. And I think the majority of the reason for that is because people don't want to snitch. I was looking at this video in Philadelphia where they were talking to like people that have been in jail, people that went to jail for not, because they didn't want to snitch, they didn't want to take out a plea bargain or whatever. And I forgot, they spoke to this one dude that he was saying, like, when y'all come to us and try to ask us to help you out with your investigation, you're basically saying to put another Black man away, put another family man away, another father, and all of this. And I'm like, man, that's crazy that's the mentality of people, like they don't look at it like, help us put this criminal away. They're looking at it like, help us put this Black man away. Like they're not they should be looked at as a criminal first, okay, they committed this crime, justice needs to be served, especially if it's a killer, like a shooter. Why would you want to keep that man in the in the community? And they just assume right away that person is a father. It's like that. Most of the people that are committing crimes are young.
It's not even shooters, bro. Look, something as crazy as child molestation, they don't want to tell.
Yo,
they want to protect the fucking predator. Are you crazy?
Yeah, look at damn. I've been wanting to talk about this too. What's the dude? Africa Bambaataa, man.
Yeah.
That is crazy. That's the hip hop pioneer. Like,
listen, KRS-One said, I don't care what he's accused of. We got to protect our leaders. Nigga, what if he did it?
That's crazy.
In the beginning, he was saying, I don't care what they accused him of. I was like, yo, but what if he really did it, though?
Yo, that's why I don't like KRS-One, bro. I can't listen to that cat anymore.
He turned me off because of that.
Yeah, that dude is horrible, bro. I couldn't believe he said that. And that's the problem right there. That like completely exemplifies a problem right there. People that want to damn protect criminals because they got some status, or it's gonna defame the hip hop community. That's what he was saying. He was saying Africa Bambaataa is hip hop. Like that's crazy to me, bro. That's fucking.
By the way, man, I wanted to give you your flowers because you made me look at things in other ways. So, you were saying earlier you had to give yourself your flowers.
Yeah,
I gotta give them to you. I gotta give them to you because You be seeing things because you really dig to search stuff out. When we just look at the surface, we don't know what's really going on, and we just run with it. And you actually going through it, and like, yo, it's not what they're making it seem. So I'm gonna give you your flowers because you be doing your due diligence. You be searching for the truth.
Yo,
you know what I'm saying?
I'll
All
be
that.
looking, man. But I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it, bro. Yeah, we always have we have a lot of good talks, me and you. You know, we have a lot of good talks. I'm glad you got to come on here, man. But I've talked to a lot of different people about this. You know, I've believed these things myself. I was always ready to believe, you know, that there's a victimization of Black people going on, that there's an oppression. I was always ready to believe that ever since a young age. And there's so much that you can find out there that if you want to believe that, there's so many articles that you can find that will say that there is racial biases in the justice system. There's all types of stuff out there that will confirm your belief. But what I started doing was listening to the opposite, you know, opinion. I wanted to hear the other side. So the main reason why I wanted to do that was so I can have a good response, you know, because I like doing these debates. I like doing videos. I like talking to people about this stuff. So I was going real hard back in 2019, 2018, 2020, really 2020. I was really digging, you know, into what do I believe, you know, because we already fell into a belief system that was proven to be wrong, you know. So I'm very hesitant to come to like conclusions immediately about stuff. Like even with what I'm doing now or what I'm reading, I'm still open to hear other things. I still leave it open. That doesn't mean that there is no racism, doesn't mean that there's no racial biases amongst police officers, you know, but how prevalent is it? How much does it affect? You know, what's the amount of it that's out there? And like how, you know, is it really as much as people say? And what I'm realizing is that it's really not as hyped up as people like make it out to be, especially when you look at some of these shootings and then you start looking at how this happens to other races. But if you wouldn't know that if you just look at what the media is showing, like with Tamir Rice's case, with I'm trying to think of other cases, but like all these cases pretty much, you would think like, yo, this only happens to Black people, you know, only Black people this happens to. We're being oppressed. When you look into it, it's like, no, this stuff actually happens to white people. So is it really racial? Is it racism that Tamir Rice was shot? People automatically assume that was racism just because it was a Black kid, you know? So yeah.
The Trayvon Martin thing, people automatically assumed there was racism on Zimmerman's part. When they played the tapes, he actually didn't say nothing racist. Trayvon did. It's crazy. Yeah. And this is what I'm saying. Yeah. I would have never known that if you didn't dig it up. I would have just ran with it because I was mad as hell. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when that verdict came out, man. I was in New York City and I was watching the case, but I wasn't really getting my information from good sources, and I wasn't digging like that. You know, I was just following the narrative that, you know, this is, you know, just it's because he's a kid, you know, because he's 17, and then also because he's Black. Like that gives that emotional appeal. Emotional appeal is really strong with people, you know, and it affects a lot of everybody, but it really affects women and the LGBT community, bro. And that's who you see that's mostly pushing this shit. This is who you see is mostly out there. I've been watching videos of the people that are out there pushing this stuff and like trying to fight for racial justice and all of that. And it's not just them, but I see a lot of them involved in all of this. And there's no logic behind it. It's all just emotional appeal. And, you know, women are very emotional. And I see like, these are the people that created the Black Lives Matter movement. It was 3 or 4 women, I believe, and they're all I believe they're all lesbians too. So I mean, it's nothing, you know, I'm not saying anything against them. I'm just saying like they just tend to gravitate towards emotional thinking rather than logical thinking, you know? And it's like I see a bunch of women, bro, on social media, especially a lot of the Hollywood women, and like they just automatically just support these movements like with no thought behind it, and they just repeat the narrative that this is racism, racial injustice. It's insane what's happening, bro. But yeah, I had to step back. And ask, do we have the full story? And if you listen to people like Jordan Peterson, James Lindsay, Ben Shapiro, even though Ben Shapiro, he's like really religious, he's a Jew, and I don't agree with him on those things, but I learned how to separate people's beliefs and what do I agree with them on. Just because I don't agree with them on everything, I can still agree with them on certain points because they'll make good points. I used to do that a lot back then. I'll be like, oh, I can't listen to this person because he believes in this. It's like that's not always the best thing to do, man. People are gonna have
real dismissive.
Yeah.
But yo, another thing I wanted to say, when I was in the cult and you was doing your thing, hard body, trying to, wake us up and all that, everything you were saying, I was already watching you, but I was listening. But everything you were saying, somebody else said that I heard, and I heard you say it, and I know you, so it's personal now. I knew you, and I was still looking at it as like, nah, he disgruntled. And then when somebody that I knew that was still in there said the same exact thing, that's when I was like, oh snap. And I knew, but I didn't want it to be true.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That was a hard time for me, bro. I know it was hard for you, because I remember that shit was a tough time for me to reverse all that, because it was such like rigorous indoctrination, and when you look at the part of the brain that religion affects, like it affects a lot of the decision-making part of your brain and all of that. Like it really takes over that completely, so now that's why I'm like, I don't have a religion, I don't have that type of effect to push me in any direction at all. So I try to be neutral, as possible, even though we all have our biases, I'm really like, I have a bias against any liberal information. I have a strong bias against it, but I'm still willing to listen to some of the stuff that they say, because I can agree with them on some things. But the reason why I get on them so much, liberal media, CNN, MSNBC, the Young Turks and all these different things, man. And a lot of these YouTubers, the popular YouTubers like David Pakman, Kyle Kalinske, like these guys have millions of followers, man. And they all talk the same way. They consider themselves progressives, and they all talk the same way. They all have the same buzzwords. You always hear racial discrimination, all the stuff that BLM talks. And it's like, to me, it always seemed like this is a cult. Like BLM seemed right away like this is like a political cult. They shame you for not believing what they believe. They call you racist right away. Like I felt like I was back in the cult, like listening to some of these BLM promoters and some of my like family and friends that was pushing this stuff. I was like, man, like y'all don't even realize like I already went through this. Like y'all just reminded me of the cult all over again. Crazy.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, man, it's like they want mob justice, It's like they don't even care about the judicial system. They don't care about waiting till somebody goes through due processes, because they don't really trust in this stuff, man. Like these people, like the majority of people, they don't trust BLM people. They don't trust in society. They don't trust in the system. The system needs to be uprooted, And I had a conversation with a girl that I actually tried to bring in the church. She visited the church one time. I drove all the way out to like Flagler to pick her up one time, just to bring her to class and then drive her all the way back. And I used to try to bring her in all the time. And then over the years, you know, whatever, I of course left the cult, and I still kept in contact with her on social media. Then when she started seeing what I was posting against Black Lives Matter, she started messaging me, and she got on that same tip like I was on. Like she never really joined the cult, and she saw it like you know, it was a negative thing, but like I started talking to her recently, and like she was talking just like I was talking when I was in the cult. And she kept saying like, you know, she kept talking like these typical like people talk that are social justice warriors. They all speak the same. Like they want to abolish the police, they want to defund the police, or they want to allocate. They love that word. We need to allocate money to the different departments and social workers. Like you can tell just if you listen to these people just for a few minutes, some of the things that they say, you can already tell what they've been reading or who they've been listening to and what kind of worldview they have and what belief they have. Just by some of the words that they use. It's freaking crazy. But this girl, I think the video that I posted was, I don't know if you remember, this is like a Chris Rock skit where you have a guy and it's like, I'm black, y'all. I'm black, y'all. I'm biggity black and I'm black.
Yeah, yeah.
A guy saying, I'm black and I'm black and I'm black. And I posted
Yeah,
that, and I'm like,
CB4.
what happened? What did you say?
I said that's from CB4, the movie.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never seen that movie before. I thought it was like a skit.
Yeah. That's where it's from.
Got you. So I remember that's what triggered this girl. She started commenting and she was like, so what's wrong with that? What's wrong with being black? And I'm like, you know, my whole point was to show you that it's not so important just to be black. Like that's not an accomplishment. Like people, like how we were, like when we were in the cult, like that's like some sort of accomplishment to people. Like I'm black. It's like, okay, and that's all I was saying. It's like, that's good, but what else do you have to offer? Like you can't just say I'm black. Like imagine you going to a job interview, yo, I'm black, yo, give me the job. Like what is that? That's not, you know, you're not gonna come to a girl and just be like, yo, what's good, girl, I'm black, yo, you wanna holler at me? Like what the fuck? Like that shit makes no sense, bro. And she kept thinking that I was saying like, she thought that what I was saying was that, you know, like it's bad or something. And I'm like, I'm not saying it's bad to be black. Like, where are you getting this idea from? What I'm saying is that this is not the only thing here that matters. And this is how all these BLM people sound and all these social justice warriors. They make such a big importance on being black. Like that's the best thing in the world. It's like, yo, that's just your race. And this is another thing I wanted to bring out. Race is not even that important, like as a central to a person's identity when it comes to white people. But it's really, they did a study on this, but it's really important to African Americans. Let me see if I can find it. I'm going to share that real quick. And that goes to show you right there who are the real people that's constantly has race. Because black people will have you think that white people are so racist. They always think about race and everything's about race. It's like white people don't even care about race, bro. It's like irrelevant to them, the majority of them. Let me see if I can find that study though. Essential to identity. But yeah, man, it's just like just having these conversations.
Yo, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Can't hear you, bro.
You can't hear me?
You hurt? Can't hear you.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you good. I don't know if that goes for everybody else. But let me see. KOA says they don't tell the police because they want street justice sometimes. Yeah, it's really genius what the media and universities are doing, though. It keeps black and brown people perpetual victims and whites quiet and guilty. Yeah, definitely. The universities right now are like the main perpetrators. They're like the main problem right now. Like I was saying, this girl that I was talking to that I known for years. I've known her for like 12 years, I think. You know, and she went to FSU, Florida State University, and she went to another university. She's very educated, but she's so stupid to me, like very dumb. And the problem is it's the worldview. You know, she's just misguided as hell. Like, she's intelligent and she'll come up with all these different things, but it's like she's just very, very misguided, but very
Yeah,
educated.
bro.
And
I
it's
couldn't
like,
hear you for a second. I don't know what happened. You were mute.
oh, nah, it seemed like it was good. I think it was just on your side. But let me see if I can find the study here on race. It was a Pew Research, and you know, the Pew does some of the best research here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. This is crazy. This is very telling to me right here. What's really happening in this world? You know, it's not so much that it's coming from white people where, you know, race is so important to white people. It's actually the other way around. And this is why you see that the conversation has shifted constantly to race, and race. But white people feel like, some of these white liberals at least feel like they need to talk about this. Like, that reverse racism effect works in many ways. Now, not only are cops feeling less likely to pull the trigger, now also, like, there's people that tend to victimize Black people now. Now they'll look at Black people like, oh, you know, I need to help them out. Poor Black person, they're probably poor or on drugs, and they'll assume all these things about them because they're Black. You know, so that probably tends to happen the other way around. But let me see if I can share the screen real quick. Here we go. Yeah, so this was done by pewresearch.org, the Pew Research Center. So they do studies on a bunch of things. So this here says that most Black adults say race is central to their identity and feel connected to a broader Black community. Now, when you look at the numbers here, I kind of want to zoom in on this. See, the numbers here are very telling. Like, even Hispanics are up there, and Asians. You see, extremely important. It says Black adults are more likely than other groups to see their race or ethnicity as central to their identity. So the question was asked, if you see your race or ethnicity as central to their identity, like, is this what makes up who you are, your race? Extremely important. Black people said 52%. That's crazy right there. 52%. Now, to me, it's not that important. I wouldn't have put an extremely or very important to my identity. What's important is your worldview. You know, there's a bunch of different, your education is important. You know, what skills you have. All of these things should be important to your identity. That's actually what should be looked at as what's most important. You see, white people put 5%. 5% of them say it's extremely important. 10% said it's very important. Overall,
let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If a Black man says, I'm a strong Black man, people gonna look at him like he's strong, he's militant, don't mess with him. Imagine if a white man said, I'm a strong white man.
Yeah.
Imagine.
I say that all the time, like Black power. You can say Black power. Yeah, Black power, power to the people. White power doesn't sound too good. You know, it just doesn't sound as good as, oh, Black power, white power. It doesn't sound right, bro. You know, like, you can get away with saying Black power, you know, but you can't get away with saying white power. People look at you crazy by saying white power.
When I was in Georgia, when, you know, the riots, you know, was like full blown, a lot of the businesses, a lot of the cars out there in Stone Mountain, Georgia, they all had like BLM on them. Like, don't break into my car. I support you. Don't break into my business. I support you.
Wow.
For real. I seen it all over the place when I was out there. I was out there for like maybe 3-4 days, no, 2 days. And I was like, yo, this looks crazy. It looked like a zombie apocalypse, bro.
That's crazy. I think I've been up there to Stone Mountain before. I've definitely been close to Stone Mountain, Marietta, and Ackworth area. I like that area, but Stone Mountain is known for being a mostly white area, right?
Right. Yeah, that's what Stonewall Jackson.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I think they used to have a bunch of KKK members up there and shit, and neo-Nazi
You might
members.
have.
Yeah, yeah, Stonewall Jackson and all of that. Okay, yeah, man. So yeah, back to the study, man. But it does show you that Hispanic and Asians also feel that, you know, connected to their race or ethnicity. But I can see that if, especially, you know, a lot of us are first generation, second generation, you know, born in the United States. You know, a lot of us are actually from the country that we're from. So, you know, that could be very central to somebody's identity because of the culture and all of that. So, but it says Hispanics 59% overall say essential, say is extremely or very important. But yeah, 74%, like that's a high number. This is I believe they surveyed like 60,000 people. I forgot how many people were in this survey here in this research. But yeah, man.
What I think with Hispanics, man, the reason why they like hold on to the country is because of pride. You know, that's where they're from. They don't never want to lose that. They say, I'm Puerto Rican, even though never been to the island, but it's a pride thing. You don't want to lose that. You know what I'm saying? Like some people say they're American, and you be like, no, I'm Puerto Rican, bro. You never been to Puerto Rico in your life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. I think, see, with me, like I've been looking at that a lot more lately, and I'm like, man, I've never really, like, I lived in Dominican Republic. I actually went to school in Dominican Republic for 1 year, but that was like pre-K. You know, I was a little kid. I barely remember Dominican Republic. I lived there for like 2 years between the ages of 4 and 6, you know, but I was born in Queens. I was born in New York City and pretty much raised in New York City. So that's what my identity is. Like when people ask me, like, yeah, of course I've been influenced by my family and I'm Dominican and it's somewhat central to my identity, but I don't think it's very or extremely important when it comes to my identity. Like KOA said, your character should be central to your identity. Like these are things that should be very important besides, you know, your race or something like that. You know, but I thought that was interesting, especially the response from white people. They didn't even think that it was central to their identity at all. And I think this is really telling right there. But yeah, man, I wanted to look into these other studies here. Let me see if I can share this one here. Yeah, okay, yeah, this was a really good one. Now, this was done by Harvard, by a man named Roland Fryer, and I've heard John McWhorter, Thomas Sowell, I've heard Coleman Hughes speak about this before, and reference this study because it's just really telling about the, you know, police force when dealing with different races. So let me see if I can zoom in on this so I can read it. Yeah, okay. So this is a Harvard study done by Roland G. Fryer Jr., an empirical analysis of racial differences in police use of force. Now, so this plays a part right here. This goes into this whole reverse racism effect. It says this paper explores racial differences in police use of force. On non-lethal uses of force, Blacks and Hispanics are more than 50% more likely to experience some form of force in interactions with police. So all of that deals with the number of interactions that we have with police in the first place. You know, so because there's more crime committed in the areas that we tend to live in, those areas are going to be patrolled more. And some of those crimes that you get stopped for, they don't have to do with homicide or violence, really, because those violent calls and homicides, those things are called in. You know, it's not something that cops are driving around and they see a homicide. That's not typically what happens. Cops usually drive around and they smell marijuana, or they see somebody do a traffic infraction, and then when they stop them, they realize, oh, there's other things, you know, that this person could be arrested for or whatever. And this is what leads to the disparity in police interactions, is because the areas that we lived in are just patrolled more because those areas that's where most of the crimes are committed. You know, there's actually, I'm gonna go into this later, but there's they try to eliminate human racial bias or human unconscious bias by creating a technology called CompStat software. And I'll go into that later, but it pretty much deals with how police, I know it's used in New York City. I don't know what other cities it's used in, but it deals with how police patrol certain areas pretty much. But yeah, adding controls that account for important context and civilian behavior reduces but cannot fully explain these disparities. On the most extreme use of force, officer-involved shootings, so this is the most extreme use of force, dealing with officer-involved shootings, we find no racial differences in either the raw data or when contextual factors are taken into account. So there's no racial differences in officer-involved shootings, but there is some differences in non-lethal use of force with Blacks and Hispanics. So this is interesting that the study found that the shootings don't show that there's a difference in race, but the non-lethal uses of force, like maybe you get roughed up by the cops, that shit tends to happen more amongst Blacks and Hispanics. But when they factor in different things, there's not that much of a difference. Like resisting arrest, you know, being not listening to commands from officers. When you factor in all those things, we tend to do that more. Blacks and Hispanics, we tend to actually resist arrest more, get more, you know, mouth off at the cops. I told a story the other day in the last live that I did about a time when I was mouthing off at cops in New York City, and I was actually roughed up by some cops. It wasn't really that bad, but I was roughed up a little bit by these cops, man. They try to push me down these damn stairs. But yeah, that's the study there. Roland G. Fryer, you know, about use of force with police. I believe he did a study in 8 different police precincts. They did a follow-up study on that. I want to share that real quick with the Washington Post, I believe.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about something because when you was talking about getting roughed up by the cops.
Yeah.
I had a situation in New York when I went back in like 2014, 2015. And I seen some people that I haven't seen in years. Some of them, you know, they did some time, whatever, they came home. And it was like, I think 4 of us on the corner. You know, we were taking pictures and shit. I ain't seen them in years. And there was a car stopped in the middle of the street. And I'm looking, and I'm like, yo, I see who's in the car. I was like, okay, that's the police, you know, undercover car. And I look at my peoples just to be clear. I'm like, yo, y'all good? Meaning nobody got nothing on them, right? Because these niggas are coming. And they came out the car and they ran at us. And they started doing like stop and frisk.
Yeah.
I was like, hold on, that's illegal because they just changed it back. And I'm telling the cop, there's a like searching. I'm like, yo, what you doing? It's illegal. I'm like, but I'm not the police. How come I know that and you don't know that? And when we got down to it at the end, the cop told me it was 1 Puerto Rican cop, 1 white cop, and 2 black cops. The Puerto Rican cop told me, because I was the only Puerto Rican dude, what are we supposed to do? Y'all looking at us like we some bitches. We supposed to drive off? I was like, oh shit, that's why y'all ran down us? Because of that?
Wow.
I'm like, yo, don't you know what you just did could have got everybody killed? Because this is our neighborhood. We're trying to figure out who you are. You don't live here. You're the opposite. You know what I'm saying? You're the opposition. So we're just trying to make sure we good. We see 4 of y'all running down on us. What if we were holding? What if somebody would have laid you down? Then we would look like animals on the TV, on the news.
They were undercover?
Yeah, they were police officers, bro. They were gang unit.
Okay. Got you.
But the thing was, the way they ran down on us, and then he tells me at the end, we ran down on you because you was looking at us like we're supposed to drive off like we some bitches. I was like, oh, so you had to make us feel like bitches. I see.
That's crazy.
I like, but that could have caused the issue. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the incidents that I could say for sure. I'm not saying it was you know, race related, but it was profiling. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, man. I mean, just like me, bro. Like, I mean, I would say that I was myself that got me in trouble. I kept mouthing off. But yeah, man, I did not expect them to try to push me down these goddamn stairs and shit. I've seen other situations, but I mean, the only situations in every situation that I can remember where cops were aggressive with us or just straight up searched us is because we was hanging out in the street, you know, we were always out in the streets and shit. So it looks like you got kicked off. But, you know, so when that stop and frisk thing was actually imposed during, I believe it was 2014, 2013, Bloomberg, I believe it came in before Bloomberg. I could be wrong, but I know Bloomberg definitely pushed it on even more and just really forced it on everybody. And what it did do, there was some positive results from stop and frisk. What it did do was eliminate people from bringing out guns because they knew that, you know, you could be stopped and frisked at any moment. So when you look at the results of what stop and frisk did, the stops didn't result in any, you know, in many findings. I believe it was like less than 5% of the stop and frisk resulted in some like federal conviction, at least something like that. I forgot the stats, but pretty much it was deemed to be a failure. But what people didn't consider was the fact that because people knew that you could be stopped and frisked, maybe they just weren't carrying as much. So that's why those numbers were so low. You know, so it did help in some way. And when you look at the results of that, I think I had a screenshot of some of the numbers because they did a lot of studies. New York City is one of the most studied police departments. NYPD has one of the most studied like police departments and how they, you know, their use of force and their tactics is constantly under scrutiny. And it's one of the best police systems. It's one of the best police systems out there, bro. It's one of the best police departments.
If you didn't know, the NYC is the biggest police department in the United States.
Yeah, they are actually. Yeah, I forgot about that. I got to do more research into the NYPD because they're very scrutinized and they're very tactical and they're pretty much on point. I mean, before Eric Gardner, there hasn't been a police killing, and that wasn't even a shooting. There hasn't been many police shootings in New York City in a long time. Like people don't be getting shot up in New York City because there aren't many people with guns like that. You know, guns are really controlled and restricted in New York City. But no, I mean, there are a lot of people, so I wouldn't say that there aren't a lot of guns. But compared to the population, there aren't that many guns and shootings. Especially when you compare it to like a city like Philadelphia. Like Philadelphia has 7 times less people than New York City, and the shootings are like up to 513, I think now, 510. Well, there's over 2,000 shootings, but 510 people killed by shooting.
Change the name to Philadelphia.
Wow, Philadelphia. Yeah, in New York City, like 370 people died from police shootings, and there's 7 times more people in Philly. So that's crazy comparison there. So New York City is actually, it's not as bad as people make it seem, but it's definitely gotten worse. So I mean, every city has gotten worse over the last 2 years.
Yeah, KOA that just left a comment. That's true what you're saying, man. That's exactly true.
So many policemen do abuse their authority and don't follow the law. They can be very egotistic, but if you just remain calm and respectful, then they are wrong, and you can get them in court later. Yeah, I was gonna take these damn detectives to court for trying to push me down the stairs, bro. I actually filed a complaint and everything. I called 911 as soon as I got home, and then I ended up not following up on it. And I was like, whatever. I ended up moving to Florida, and I just kind of not followed up on it. And he says you should go see the police in some other countries, though. Yeah, I mean, I look at it like this. In other countries, the police don't have to deal with the number of guns that are in circulation in that country. We have 3 times more guns than people in this country. There's about 9 billion guns in circulation, you know, according to the statistics, the numbers that they have. You know, they keep track of all these guns. Each gun has a number on it that they keep track of. But now they have ghost guns that are being made by like 3D printers and shit, you know, because that's a new technology, 3D printing, where you can get parts and assemble a gun in your home and shit. You can get parts from like different fucking places. So there's a lot of these ghost guns going around and shit. That's another issue. I need to do more research on that, but I've been hearing about that lately, and that's a problem in Philly. But yeah, I think the thing with police officers and why they have this ego and this attitude, it definitely comes with the badge and the authority that they get. But then look at what the people that they got to deal with. You know, like they got to be just as tough as those criminals that they got to deal with, you know? And sometimes being in that position where they're constantly dealing with people that are the lowest level of society, you know, it could affect them in a way too. So I look at all of that, you know, it doesn't excuse it, but I consider all of that in the way that they act, you know, and NYPD, I've experienced a lot of asshole ass cops, you know. New York City, just people are more damn rude up there anyways. But yeah, the cops in New York City are way more tougher than the cops that I've seen out here in Orlando.
Well, you know, it comes with the attitude, bro. Everybody from New York has an attitude. The police gonna have one too.
Yeah, definitely. Cops have a high suicide rate. Yeah, that's true, man. I heard about that. I think some of these cops that were there dealing with the people in January 6th, the Capitol riot or whatever. I've been hearing that some of these cops committed suicide or something like that. I don't know why I keep hearing about that, because they keep trying to tally up that number.
Like the military, bro. That PTSD is sort of like the military, man.
Yeah.
The things you see on that job is crazy. A lot of people can't handle it.
Yeah, for sure. This person said, I'm subscribed to a lot of First Amendment auditors on YouTube. Very educational. You guys should check it out sometime. Yeah, definitely check those guys out, man. They be on point. They be knowing their laws, man. But sometimes they do too much, man. They be going up in the post office and just be recording people. And they do that on purpose. They try to cause a scene, you know, to put on YouTube so they can put the story up and say, look, they discriminated against me, you know, and all this shit, and they pretty much become the victim. You know, they just go up in the post office and start recording, because according to what they believe, they think that they could go in there because it's a public place and just start recording, you know. And when people start telling them, like, sir, why are you recording? You know, they're like, what? I can record. And it causes a scene. A lot of these guys, man, it's funny. A lot of them get arrested. Some of them actually get arrested, but you know, some of them know that they can't get arrested for that unless they get trespassed. So a lot of times they don't go back to that same post office because they have to be trespassed, and then if they return, now you get arrested. But if they're there first, you know, the first time there, you know, they could just be told to leave by like a manager or something like that. But usually, you know, they just stay right there, and they're like, I'm not going nowhere. I know my rights. They got to call a cop. Then they start going back and forth with the cop about the laws. It's really interesting when you start looking at those First Amendment auditors. Like that stuff is really interesting. But yeah, it's nice seeing them know more about the law than some cops, though. Yeah, yeah, some of them do. Some of them be putting cops in their place, you know. But I seen one cop shut one of them down one time, you know, because there was a sign. Some of these post offices do have signs that says that I think the law with the post office, there's like a fine print that says that if a manager says that you can't record, then, you know, you have to listen to that manager or something like that. But yeah, those First Amendment auditors, man, I learned a lot from them, you know, but some of them be on some crazy stuff, man. Poster 7. Yeah, Poster 7, exactly. That's it. I've seen them videos, man. Those videos are really interesting. I be binging on those videos sometimes. But yeah, I want to show that ComStat. Let me see if I can find this here.
Didn't you send me a video one time with these dudes? Because the law says they figured they didn't have to listen to the cops, and dude got tased just because they could walk around with the assault rifle. Is it the same type of dude?
Oh, no. I don't think those are the same type of people. That was just something I wanted to show you because when when that whole Kyle Rittenhouse thing happened, people started posting a video that showed. I remember this came out years ago, but people started going back to it, where it shows people walking around with an assault rifle, and they did a test where it was a white guy and a black guy, and the white guy was walking around some neighborhood, and the cops stopped him and like nicely, politely asked him some questions. And then when you see the black guy gets guns pulled on him. He gets told to get on the ground right away and all of that. So I had a lot of questions about that. You know, I don't know how much I trust some of these YouTubers that do these studies. You know, I don't know if they secretly call the cops and said, there's a guy out here, you know, I don't know, man, you know, just to get more views for their YouTube video. But I like to go through all those videos just to show, well, is there a case where this happened to white people? And that was one of those situations where that I found that it actually did happen to white people too, where they had assault rifles. They just got guns pulled out on them. But that guy that got tased was, you know, he was talking crap. But they were there.
He deserved that shit.
Yeah, he definitely deserved it. But the other guy that was there was like a big guy with a gun. They were really there for him because he had that assault rifle. I think the guy that got tased had maybe like a handgun or something on him that you couldn't even really see. But yeah, man, there's open carry laws in different states. And that video that was circulating where it showed the white guy and the black guy, it looked like it was done in two different areas, and it was definitely not the same cops. So, you know, I don't know. I look at that, people look at that and automatically assume, like, you see, black people can't walk around with AR rifles. But, you know, speaking of that, yeah, I could show this real quick. There was a guy out there in Kenosha that had an AR rifle. He was actually out there with his daughter. I thought it was really interesting because then in the news report, he came out later and said that they were actually there during that same night that Kyle Rittenhouse.
Just around here doing that. Just providing security for Black Lives Matter movement leaders of Kenosha.
In this story, right? We have a story that, in my opinion,
because people kept saying, "What if Kyle Rittenhouse
another one of the things that the left-wing media like to say, and people on the left like to say about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, which is, well, if Kyle Rittenhouse was black, right? And one of the things they like to say outside of if Kyle Rittenhouse was black, he would have been convicted of murder or whatever, is that, well, if Kyle Rittenhouse was black and he was there with an assault rifle, right, then he would have been shot, right? He would have been shot, okay? He would have been shot by the police, right? Because black people apparently can't carry guns, right, without being shot by the police, or protect people's property without being shot by the police, according to them. And this story right here is a direct example of why, again, that narrative is just not true. Armed father-daughter duo march alongside anti-Rittenhouse protesters to protect them, right? The same people who are protesting the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse was there to protect property, okay, and unfortunately had to use his weapon to protect himself, are using protection, right? Using a similar weapon, right? Maybe not the exact same weapon, but a similar weapon that Kyle Rittenhouse used to protect themselves. They're literally using services that they are protesting against. Again, it's funny how the left-wing people, it's almost like they don't actually believe the things that they say, that they simply are upset about Kyle Rittenhouse because he's white, right? That seems to be where a lot of the madness is coming from, is simply from the fact that he's white, not about what he did, but because he was white in what he did.
I believe that.
Right? Again, these people are probably some of the biggest racists in this country. But let's read here about this story, because I find this to be fascinating. And I want to play this video real quick before we read about this, which you can see the father-daughter here walking with their firearms. As I was researching these two, it appears that they crossed state lines, according to Breitbart News, right? As they travel from the Chicago area all the way over to the Kenosha area. These people are literally protesting against what they're doing, I'm not sure if they realize that. Protesters upset over the acquittal of Kyle Rittenhouse marched in Kenosha on Sunday in the presence of a Second Amendment supporting father-daughter duo armed with AR-15s that they said were to protect the demonstrators. Quote, "We just do security for different groups. We're doing a favor for them," Eric Jordan, 50, told the Post while walking alongside his 16-year-old daughter, Jade. Jordan said he had been training Jade to use firearms since she was only 4, but only let her touch a weapon once she was 14. He said they were protecting a restaurant and 2 parking lots in the area on the night Rittenhouse shot 3 people, including 2 fatally amid protests over police conduct. Wait. Hold on. These 2, right? A girl, right, who is 16, probably was 15 at the time, were protecting a restaurant and 2 parking lots in the area on the night Rittenhouse shot 3 people, right? So wait. They were in the area doing the exact same thing Kyle Rittenhouse claimed that he was doing at the time. And they walked free. They were not shot by the police on the spot. And they're black. Bruh, if you listen to people on the left, they would tell you that this is impossible. It's impossible for black people to do what Kyle Rittenhouse was doing, right? And get away with it, right? We've already saw and point out numerous examples of black people getting off on self-defense. I mean, you have felons, right, that was shooting at police officers that got off on self-defense. We've seen that.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cases, man, where you have people that were getting their house raided and they'll shoot a cop, sometimes to kill them, and they'll get off on self-defense. You had a situation in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, close to Pittsburgh, where it was a black guy, Jamal Spencer, I believe his name was. It was a black guy who shot an unarmed white guy in a bar. And that story was a little funny, but the guy still got off on self-defense. So this is why I like listening to some of these conservatives, because they'll show you the other side of the coin. They'll show you these other situations, and you don't see that. The liberal media, they don't want to pick up a story like that. But I think it's interesting that this guy, he's not even a supporter of Kyle Rittenhouse, but he's here doing the same thing that everybody's mad that Kyle Rittenhouse is doing, and his daughter's 16, and his daughter was probably 15 at the time of the Kenosha riots, which is really interesting here, that people, they don't see the complete hypocrisy right here. You know, people were mad at Kyle Rittenhouse for crossing state lines, and there was a lot of lies going around too about the firearm, and you know, he took that gun across state lines. I think that whenever you see the liberal media hype up a story, you're always going to get lies that get circulated around there, and some of these things just get repeated constantly, and you know, the other news reports don't even fact check it, and they just repeat the same, you know, report the same lie. But I thought this was really interesting right here with Kyle Rittenhouse, man. It just reminded me of this. You know, I posted stuff on my Instagram for those that want to follow me on Instagram. This is my handle. You know, I post a lot of different things here, different children that get shot. This stuff needs way more attention. You know, people were really focused on this shooting here in Oxford. You see how many views I got for this video? This is the most views I've ever gotten for a video, which is really telling of what people are focused on here. These school shootings when somebody's white, you know, but this one got a lot too, because I was using the same hashtags. When I saw that this got so many views, I said, yo, let me start using this hashtag for all these other cases. And I posted this video here of this kid in Philly, and I put all these same hashtags. This is a crazy story.
You wanted to be somebody. You wanted to be known.
Samir Jefferson, a 14-year-old Thomas A. Edison High School freshman, was waiting for the bus near Wyoming and Rising Sun in Feltonville Monday afternoon around 3:30 p.m. when police say 2 people got out of a car and chased him, firing off about 35 rounds. Jefferson was hit 18 times and ran a block before collapsing.
This is a crazy story, man. I went back and forth with this idiot right here, man. He was like, man, don't act dumb. Think of all the Chicago youngins that got killed. And yo, this guy was so stupid, man. He said, think of all the Chicago youngins that got killed. All of them was in business. They didn't belong. Whatever he got killed for, I'm sure, was a response to whatever he was doing. I got so mad at this dude for trying to, you know, assume that this kid was doing somewhat. Like, he's trying to assume that this kid was up to no good or something. Like, we don't know that. There's no evidence that this kid was involved in drug dealing or any gang activity, or nothing like that ever came out. And this cat is like, don't act dumb, man. Think of all the Chicago youngins. Like, I don't even, like, I got so upset with this cat. I be going back and forth with these Instagram people, but yeah, man, this is my Instagram page. You know, I post different stuff, music videos, you know, funny stuff, whatever. But y'all still there? You still there, Brooklyn out there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah, man, but that's why, you know, there was, I went live the other day too. Was it yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday. There was a dude that he's still commenting on that video that I put with the school shootings. And this cat was mad that he was saying that I'm being biased because I'm only showing black people in the video with the school shootings. And if you look at the video that I posted, there were Hispanics in there. And all I did was go through the list of school shootings. And it just so happened that a lot of the suspects were black. And he thought that I was just posting videos of people just because they're black. But I was like, bro, I literally went through the entire list of the school shootings. And the one that I didn't post was the one in Oxford, because the video was about the ones that people were not making a big deal about, the ones that people didn't hear about. And this dude was going back and forth. He's still commenting on that video till this day. There's like 40 comments on that video. It's freaking crazy. And I found it real interesting, bro, that he got mad at the fact that I'm exposing what's going on in the different schools and how, you know, there's different school shootings in the hood that people don't even talk about. And he thinks that I just singled out the ones that were just black people. And I told him, I'm like, bro, I went down the list. There's a whole list that you can go through and see all the school shootings for this year, even the ones in the school parking lots, even the ones in the high school football games. And the only one that I didn't post, there was actually another one in a city called Winnie, Texas, that they didn't find a suspect or none of that. And the news reports didn't give much information. Like, there was very little news reports because it's a very small town. So I didn't post that, and I didn't post the one in Oxford. But even if I did, it still wouldn't change the racial disparity that the majority of people committing these shootings are African Americans. And he's upset that he's upset at the result of reality and thinking that I'm showing a biased reporting. Like, I thought that was crazy, bro. I just wanted to talk about that because I think, you know, this is like the problem of why this shit doesn't, you know, people don't like talking about this shit. But I think it's like, this shit is important, bro. Like, look at how these shootings just be happening all the time. Like, this shit is like way too common.
This needs to stop. Shots are fired.
New York City. This happened like last month.
Get out and shoot the other men who fire back.
Beating up a girl.
This needs to stop. More bullets fly. Look as sparks light up the pavement.
Now with this video, I definitely was biased and I only looked at certain shootouts. But these are not hard to find. And the reason why is because this mostly happens within the community, man. Let's not even lie to ourselves anymore. I want to be real about this shit, bro. Like, this shit is a problem, man. People just be killing each other.
Then a young man starts shooting at a group of people. Then you see another person start shooting.
People with kids. You got babies out here in these neighborhoods.
Hey, did you see that shooting in the Bronx?
Which one was that?
This guy ran up on somebody and he shot him. He shot him a couple times, and then he ran up on him when there was kids around the area. Like, it's on camera, bro. A little girl shielded her little brother so he don't get killed or don't get hit. Thank God none of them got hit. But he ran up on him and started shooting, bro. Kids got knocked down and everything.
That was recently?
I would say within the last 3 months.
Oh, okay. Yeah, man. The Bronx is one of the worst places, bro. The Bronx is the worst place in New York City. It's crazy. But yeah, man. I'm gonna close it out, man. In a few here. I just wanted to show this video that I put together, you know, and put it on Instagram. I'm gonna probably throw this on my next video because I'm actually working on a video about black on black crime and what the numbers show and why it's a problem, you know, in the community and why it needs to be focused on, because it happens predominantly more within the black community, even though there are 13% of African Americans in this country, which makes it even crazier to me. The fact that this happens so much when there's not that many African Americans compared to white people in this country. And you can find this happen way more in the hood. That's why it's a problem. The same reason why people focus on cops, police shootings of black people more than white people, it's the same reason why we need to focus on black crime. It's because it happens more amongst black people. The same way they say that it happens more to black people that they get shot by cops or they get brutalized by police. You know, it happens to white people. The numbers show that more white people do get shot by police every year. It's like 300 and, you know, the numbers always differ. Like you have like 150 to 100 people, you know, the difference more than white people, you know, more white people than black people, pretty much. So there'll be like 380 white people compared to 270 black people in a year that got shot. Now, the reason why those numbers reflect that there are more white people and people are still upset that black people are getting killed by cops is because when you factor in the population of black people, that's a high number of black people getting shot by cops. So that's why people say, you know, that there's disproportionate black people that get killed. You know, so it's because you factor in the population. Now, I'm going to do the same thing with the black on black crime, with the homicide, and I'm going to factor in the population because it shows the same type of disparity. But the reason why you see the disparity in the police shootings is because there's more police interactions with African Americans. That's why that number gets brought up so high. If there were a lot less police interactions, if the crime was to be brought down, then that number would naturally come down. So, you know, and it's all, you gotta factor in math. It's a lot of math that goes into this shit. So I'm gonna do, you know, I'm gonna do a video on that in the future, bro. But yeah, man, you got anything else you want to say before I close it out?
I'm good, bro.
You good? All right, man. So I'm gonna holler at you, man. I'm gonna hit you up tomorrow and shit. I'm gonna call it a night, man. Thanks for joining me. And everybody, thanks for tuning in to San Miguel TV. Peace out. Have a good night.